Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Eric Elbaz. I'm here with John Park, and we work for some of the larger broadcasting companies at Akamai. And today we're going to be talking about ad monetization technologies and and advanced media workflows. Okay. We're going to essentially go over fundamentals of ad insertion. I'm not sure how many of you here have an ad monetization strategy or how far you've implemented your strategy, but we're going to keep it at a high level, and then at the Q&A session we'll go into details, and if you have any particular questions, we'll go from there. And John will talk about the Akamai Solution, and we'll take questions and answers. Okay. All right, so monetization of online digital content, it's no longer a distant concept, right? It's here, it's now. And the one common denominator for all of us, whether we're broadcasters, publishers, or rights holders, is to profit from that. And unfortunately, that's actually a very difficult thing to do. It's not as easy to do as live TV or linear TV for sure. More and more of your viewers are used to experiencing your content mobile first, right? And your users are expecting to receive that video instantaneously. So the time to getting that first frame, if they're not getting that, they're going to form a bad perception of your brand, and worse, actually move away from your content, and that's not what we want to do. The longer it takes your video to start, the more likely the viewers are to form negative opinions about your brand, and more importantly, turn away from your valuable content. So managing performance is absolutely key when it comes to monetizing your content and doing ad insertion in general. So the path to online video monetization has its hurdles and complexities, and we are going to discuss some of the strategies to help overcome and succeed with monetizing your valuable content. All right, and to just talk a little about the fact of where we are today in terms of monetization and strategy. Digital advertising sales has surpassed linear TV ad sales in the US for the first time in 2016. Right, and this really speaks to the point that ad monetization is here, and it's here to stay. Despite the challenges around some of the standardizations, measurements, analytics, supply chain integrity, the advertising will actually capture 77 cents of every new ad revenue dollar will be digital. And only 17 cents of that will be for television. All right, and we're actually expecting digital advertising to overtake TV globally by the end of this year. So if you guys haven't known that, here's the proof for that for you. All right, so I'm going to go into the next slide and actually show you a day in the life of what is ad traffic at Akamai, just to show you the volumes we're actually dealing with to help support this. That advertising is here, and that if you don't have your strategy, you should come and talk to us for sure. All right, a day in the life of, and this is essentially aggregated measurements of ad data from a couple of our large broadcasters, and this is sort of like the typical week or day, right? On the left side, what you'll see here is we're seeing peaks of a terabit, and this is every weekend. So think of your sporting events or your weekly sporting events or your other live events. Peaks of 1 terabit per second is the new norm, right? This is something that we don't even lose sleep over. If you look at the actual number of hits for this traffic, we're seeing peaks of 210,000, right? So this is actual ad. This is money. Every hit to every ad, that's actually money, right? So if you're not doing this, you're losing out. What we're also seeing here as well is that it is becoming very common for us to see large peaks. Okay. So as we said, so what this is telling us here is that you need to make sure your content is of high quality. If you look at the peaks here and you divide that by the number of hits, that means that every user that actually received an ad here is receiving an ad of about an average of 5 megabits, which is ad broadcast quality, if not better. We're actually seeing even larger quality here. So it's important that we need to push out the lower quality bit rates from our ecosystem. As an industry, we need to make sure that we are going to push forward the concept of better than broadcast, right? And we're doing it. You see it. This is, again, just the typical day at Akamai here. We need to obviously focus on addressing and removing latency in your workflows, because ad delivery, delivering your video content is just a small piece of the entire workflow. So it's very, very important for you to actually address removing latency in your workflow in order to improve your monetization strategy, right? So delivering high quality, delivering it at scale, those are all things you need to start thinking about as a complete part of your monetization strategy. All right, we're going to talk about some basic concepts of ad insertion. I'm assuming most of you here do ad insertion on your live streams and perhaps on some of your VOD content. But most of it happens over HTTP, and there's essentially a couple of formats. HLS, HDS, Dash, CMAF is coming down the pipeline, but it's all over HTTP. And the common denominator of all of those is that you have a manifest. The manifest is sort of the map, right? And then you have fragments, which is your video content. The way that traditionally ad insertion is done is either through the client side, where you have an SDK on your connected devices, or you have JavaScript on your desktop, and that makes that a call to an ad decisioning network if you're that advanced already, or to the ad, and then stitches it into the stream. And you have server side, where the actual advertisement is stitched as part of that manifest, and then delivered to your users. Obviously, server side is a little bit better there from the perspective that the quality of what the user experiences is exactly as broadcast, right? That's really the big differences between client side and server side. All right, so let's define a couple of things. What is ad decisioning, ad insertion, some of the differences between server side and client side, and some of the challenges that you are probably facing today with your server side ad insertion if you're doing live streaming or live events. All right, ad decisioning. What is ad decisioning? Ad decisioning essentially determines which ad should be played during any given ad spot. And that can actually take into effect things like your user's location. It's the business intelligence of which ad to serve to your users, right? And that's essentially what ad decisioning. You guys might know some companies like DFP, or the common ones, which are ad decisioning platforms that actually serve the ad. Some of you might actually do programmatic, which means that you do your buying, inventory, sales, and all of that management under one platform. And then we have ad insertion. Ad insertion is not the same as ad decisioning. Ad insertion is stitching your manifests versus and serving your content versus the business logic. And those are two separate pieces of the components. Again, ad insertion is also known as the ad management system. And again, as we spoke about before, there are two general ways of doing ad insertion. One is client side, one is server side. And some of you might ask me a little bit later, well, which one do we do, right? And we'll get into that in a little bit. All right, here are some of the pros and cons of doing each one. Client side is obviously device heavy, so you have to program your ads to each device, to each client, and to each browser separately, right? So in other words, a lot more development time that has to go into it, different code bases and branching. So it's very client heavy. Server-side ad insertion is client-light, right? So in other words, all of the decisioning, everything happens on the server side, so it's server heavy. And then one of the major differences is, I'm not sure if, I'm sure all of you have gotten into this, but client-side ad insertion has a lot of challenges. And some of those challenges essentially destroy the monetization strategy, such as ad blocking, right? So what's happening here is the ad blocking technologies or ad blockers, they know that you're serving your ads from separate domains. And so what they'll do is they'll actually block that in an attempt to not serve up any ads. So those are some of the challenges that you have with client side versus server side. Okay, now that we've actually covered the very basics of ad insertion, and again, we'll go into the question and answer piece of it, and hopefully we'll get into it a little deeper. But now that we've covered the basics of ad monetization and ad insertion, John will actually go into the Akamai approach into doing ad monetization and the holistic view. So with that, John, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. All right. So to talk about challenges, Eric's gone through the different types of ad insertion, whether it be server side, client side. So basically, from an Akamai point of view, we want to kind of go through kind of three sets of challenges that we're looking to address, right? So when we're looking at ad insertion in general, so video insertion itself is essentially just one component of the entire workflow. So there's the content preparation, there's the ad creatives, the ad decisioning, the security policies, the edge device, determining which edge device they want to use. So basically there are a number of different components that need to work in tandem in order for the entire stream workflow to basically be delivered. So in all of those, in terms of working reliably and at scale, that's I'm sure maybe some of you in this room have been challenged with that scenario already. So secondly, customers, they typically have fragmented workflows. So there are multiple different calls between encoders, clients. It's just, there are a number of different pieces of how to make sure that entire workflow comes together and gives that end user that seamless experience. Okay, and especially, I don't need to remind you in the digital ecosystem that the ever-changing world of, software, encoders, hardware, the next thing, it's just to keep up. That's becoming a huge challenge. So giving that integrated solution, that's where we're looking to basically help you with to basically deliver that to your end users. Okay. So I want to kind of go through and just go through a very high level diagram or workflow diagram of how you typically will deliver a stream. Okay. So from a content provider perspective, you have you'll create your content. Put that through an encoder, which is pretty much standard the way things go today, through either media services live, via an entry point, or if it's an on-demand stream, you can use Akamai Net Storage. Okay, so in this case, the ad insertion network, and I'm going to put in YoSpace in here, which we've just announced a partnership with. They'll basically take pull that manifest file, and when a user makes that request for that particular file, it'll get posted to the ad decisioning service. Okay, so once that ad decisioning service has determined what type of ad to play in that particular ad block, we'll basically go ahead and deliver that file to the end user. Okay. So earlier when I addressed some of the challenges, so there are no separate calls going through the client itself or through encoders. So all of that is being managed by us here. Okay. So with the fragmented workflows, Akamai is looking to provide you with an additional component, that protective layer of quality assurance. So ad insertion companies, whether they know this or not, they can inadvertently become bottlenecks in the entire workflow. So think of, for example, live events, high-profile events, Super Bowl, World Cup, cricket, OTT, linear type of events. If the ad insertion can't keep up, the network can't keep up, or there's congestion there, what we can do is provide that, because at the edge, we're basically monitoring that traffic. What we can do is basically either serve a default ad that could be placed on net storage, or we can even put a slate up, whatever matches that time slot, so that end user experience doesn't get disrupted. So there are often times where, at least in terms of my day-to-day implementations and working with customers, there are times where we think the stream is down, but we find out somewhere down the line, it could be an encoder issue, or in this particular case, there are certain ad insertion network provider that is down or not responding in a relatively quick manner. Okay, so we're looking to provide you with that scale and that assurance to basically provide you that the ultimate user experience to basically give your end users a happy experience. Okay. One additional benefit in terms of this entire workflow going through the Akamai network. I know Eric mentioned the ad blockers. So we can help assist there because all of the streams are being served over one domain. Okay, so we'll basically have that understanding, and even if you like serve that over TLS, the ad blocking technologies companies, they can't really read that manifest file. So we'll prevent that, the disruption of monetization on the ads. Okay. All right. So the solution itself, just tying everything together. So the content providers can utilize that global network, right? So you can usually have that return on investment of the CDN. In this case, it's Akamai. Secondly, that manifest manipulation in the client-side SDKs for reporting, for VAST calls, with our partnership with the YoSpace, and a very simplified implementation, using Media Services Live, Media Services on Demand, with hooks into our, media analytics through the BOC for that ultimate visibility in terms of end-to-end workflow. Okay. So I did want to talk briefly about Media Services Live. So, again, ad insertion is just one component, that manifest manipulation. So ultimately, delivering that entire stream, in this case for live events, just throughout. So basically, for Media Services Live, the ingest acceleration, so you may have heard Michael Fay yesterday talk through this during the keynote, and hopefully you guys have gone to the Developer Partnership Lounge to see the demo of this. But if not, I encourage you to go check it out. Okay? So where we're looking to accelerate the first mile here is through an SDK that can be installed in your encoder. So this is using UDP technology. Right? So the benefits here, we're taking a smaller pipe and giving you that higher throughput, and ultimately getting that contribution feed to within the Akamai network, where we can enhance and deliver that to the end users. Okay? So if you have a 10 meg stream, and through first mile issues, you're only, when it gets to the Akamai entry point, you're only getting maybe a 5 or a 6 meg stream. Ultimately, that's something that you would want to correct, and basically have that full 10 meg stream available to your end users for that high quality content. Okay. So secondly, in terms of media acceleration, so in terms of our mid-tier, we've really actually built out our mid-tier to handle error correction, I apologize. So basically packet loss and just reliability of the stream. So to handle those, the connection between our edge servers through the end and through the edge server through our end users. Okay. And lastly, in addition to having that SDK on the encoder itself, right? So we'll basically have that visibility to see if your encoder is, the health of the encoder, is it being overwhelmed, is it acting slow? We'll basically be able to provide you that telemetry in terms of what's going on there. Okay. So pretty much just kind of summing everything up, the integrated solution to provide, whether you're looking to serve live streams on demand or perhaps both, we can provide you that with the products that are available through Akamai Media Delivery. We'll have the content preparation in case you do need to do the content transformation within the network for on demand at the moment, and the adaptive the media manifest manipulation through YoSpace, and even through adaptive the media player in case you guys do need a player to deliver your streams. Okay. I do want to throw in that the media analytics piece at the bottom through our broadcast operations center and network operations center. So, again, talking through that telemetry, so we'll have that visibility in terms of where the network is either failing or where we're seeing that those levels of congestion. Okay, so we can reach out to you proactively, or we can give you those dashboards and reports to see those, to where that, where you're serving pristine streams, or if there are some network issues that we need to address. Okay, all right. And that's, at a high level, that's pretty much it. I wanted to make sure that we leave enough time for any particular questions that you guys had.
It's a really good question. So I think what your question is, does YoSpace support
Can you repeat
multiple?
the question?
Yeah, so the question was, does YoSpace or the YoSpace service support multiple ad decisioning platforms? And the answer to that is yes, right? They support DFP, they support a couple of other large ones. I invite you to come and talk to us about your particular needs. But remember, the manifest manipulation is a completely separate thing than ad decisioning. So, you're going to need to look for a partner that has the flexibility to integrate your ad decisioning relationship, right, and not tie you down. And so I can say that YoSpace does support that. Now, there's some certifications around that. Again, the technology landscape is changing very, very quickly, especially with ad decisioning and what does it mean to standardize ad impressions for server-side ad insertion. No one is there yet, right? So don't let anybody fool you. But in terms of the support for multiple ad decisioning systems, YoSpace is there. And again, we're not tied down to YoSpace. We just talked about a new partnership. We've done, collectively, we've done Primetime, Adobe, people that work, a bunch of different ad decisioning platforms as well. The goal here is to make sure that we can actually scale. We're a wraparound that we can help you scale your advertisements. As you saw from the presentation earlier, 1 terabit, which back then was like, what? That's a lot of traffic. We're doing that as table stakes. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah. Can we get you a microphone?
It's coming around, so.
Check.
So you have ads analytics. Do you have maybe some dashboards you can show with regards to the KPIs you're able to measure related to these ads? Can you just provide a few more details regarding that? And does that require to deploy your full player, or only, and is it part of your media analytics, or are these two different products?
That's a really great question. So I think the question, just to repeat it, was I believe you were looking for additional information about what analytics we support and what data. So again, we're not tied down to any particular solution. Yes. Okay. So we do have that information. Come talk to me a little bit later, and I'll share what I can with you. Again, a lot of this is customer information, so I'm not going to be able to do that. But at an overall high level, I can talk about quality. I can talk about the capacity and just the volume that we're seeing, and that's really the big takeaway that I want you guys to prepare for. The quality of ads themselves are increasing. The volume at which we're serving them is increasing, and we want to make sure that your strategy is actually aligned for that. I keep on hitting this. Okay, you over there. Is there a click-through? Okay, so you're talking about dynamic ads, or?
No, but I mean, so if you have an ad that's running, you want to be able to click through to it, right? To follow the ad.
Okay. I don't know what that particular piece of it with YoSpace is, but I believe they do. Yeah, I mean, they're serving traffic for live sports events, and I think that's a major component of doing that. So yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Then you offer an additional service like live to VOD clipping. Will you have a clean VOD file as a result, or is an ad linked or connected to that VOD file?
It's a really great question. So the question is about delivering a live event, and does that mean that when we capture it, does it capture it with the ads? I believe that's what you're asking for. And YoSpace has the ability to actually, again, separate that and marry your VOD content so that it's clean. I know from a lot of my customers specifically, they served live stream, and then what we call the full event replay of that is clean of ads, right? And yes, Akamai does have video clipping services that we've invested in, but if you're talking about Snappy or some other service that you may be doing today to actually leverage that, you should be able to do that from the live stream without the ads there. It's clean.
Thank you.
You over there.
Yeah,
Have you thought about using similar
That's very interesting. Yeah, I know Yospace, for a matter of fact, has their client SDK. So essentially, if you're serving this live stream on a connected device, they have that capability. We've done that. Do you want to further empower that?
I mean, so again, the Yospace partnership is very, very new. It's not to say that we don't have it. We don't have the full visibility in terms of what they're capable of doing. So I would imagine yes. But again, I don't have the full context in terms of what's available today.
But that's just for videos, not for static.
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, exactly right. Any other questions?
Yes. Sorry, I have a mic.
I apologize. Go ahead.
No problem. So 2 questions. The first one is, does it only support HLS or also Dash? And the second question is, can I use the same technology to provide alternative personalized content instead of ads?
So I'm gonna take the second portion. You can take the first portion.
The first portion is yes. We support HLS and Dash. I believe at the moment we do not support CMAF yet, but that will be coming very soon.
By a raise of hand, how many of you have heard about CMAF yet? You have. Okay. You have. Okay. Again, so CMAF is what this is actually a really good thing. The industry has come together because they understand that there is big money in this, and they better get ahead of it and actually come together and speak the same language. So CMAF gives us, as developers, publishers, content rights holders, the ability to talk the same language for video, and it's about time. So, like you said, HLS and HDS is supported. And CMAF is definitely coming.
And CMAF will go ahead and in terms of storage costs, it'll help you reduce that file, right? So you'll have 2 manifest files, one for Dash, one for HLS, and basically it'll reduce to having the duplicate content for the different types of format. So that's been, I don't know if you've heard or been to any of Will Law's talks on CMAF. He is our chief principal architect, I believe. I don't know the exact title. Don't hold me to that. But yes, so he is one of our. He's on the CMAF board.
He's actually one of the inventors.
Exactly. Of it, so he, I would encourage you to see if he is here and track him down.
And I know you had the second portion of your question. Can you just repeat that again, if you don't mind?
The second point was if I could use the platform to not play out ads, but personalize alternative content.
Very good. So personalization and hyper-local targeting, right? And that has traditionally been the domain of the ad decisioning network. But how can Akamai help you in that regard? Well, Akamai has all the information about your client, where you're coming from, where you are, at what time it is, and so forth, which DMA you're coming from. So we have that as a service right now. It's our Edscape database. So we can actually include that information to your ad decisioning platform, and then have that ad decisioning platform become even more intelligent than it already is by layering information on top of it. So you can say, hey, you know what? I only want to serve content for users who are 24 to 36, only within this particular zip code, and I want to serve them, some political ad, right? That capability is inherent with the Akamai network. And I'm glad you're actually asking that, because that, again, is a really important piece. It's not just one piece. It's not about just stitching a manifest and actually just playing it out. There's other considerations, such as how do I make sure that I'm accountable with the ads that I'm targeting to my user base and to my business. So the short answer is yes. Any other questions?
Yeah.
I know you've been asking. I apologize.
Yeah, you got the mic.
So my question is, does the Yospace partnership with Akamai extend to, like, if to the Brightcove? Like in my particular case, I got Brightcove and Akamai's tied in as a CDN.
I'm sorry. So does it?
Does it extend to the Brightcove? Like if you have a partnership with Brightcove already? Because I know this is particular. Having directly Akamai.
I'll tell you this. So I think I have actually done one of the first large, very complex integrations with Yospace at Akamai. This was for a large broadcasting customer, and this is sort of the advanced media piece of this, right? I mean, a lot of us. How many here are streaming live event content? Okay. How many of you are doing it for sports? Okay. So we all know how important the low latency component of sports is, right? I don't want, I hear my neighbors screaming, "Go!" and I haven't seen it yet. right? So low latency is actually very important. Akamai has solved that from a streaming perspective with Media Services Live 4.x with our live origin. But when you're talking about monetization strategy, how do you tie that in, right? And what that means is that becomes a lot more challenging for the ad decisioning platform and the ad stitching platform to speak together when you're talking about latency of 2 seconds or 2-second fragments, going from 8 to 6 to 4, and now 2 and even 1. By the way, again, I encourage you guys to go see the faster than broadcast demo. But when you tie in ad insertion into that, it becomes more complex. And what that means is all these different components have that much shorter of a time to talk. Right, and so we did an integration with YoSpace where we brought this challenge to them. Working with Akamai, we were able to actually deliver that for a very large broadcaster. So low latency streaming with ad insertion.
Right.
Okay.
And just to close that off, sorry guys, to your question, specific integrations, because we have a handful of clients that we have in production today using YoSpace. I have not dealt with, or I have not heard of one using Brightcove specifically, but I kind of want to, I'm not saying we can't, I would say that we're very flexible in terms of, working with the different various providers or partners. So the various ones that we have today, we have a hinting on, we have a hinting on the URL itself, so they'll pull the ad directly from net storage, or we'll do a 302, kind of a redirect to basically get that ad. So not to say we can't, I don't think we know at the moment.
So the question was, can we integrate that with Brightcove, right?
Yes.
So
that's correct. So yes,
yes,
exactly. Just want to make sure that we can be flexible with different scenarios.
Yeah. From an Akamai perspective, we don't want to tie down the customer. We want to make sure we are here as system integrators for you. Right? We're not here to sell your product. We're here to sell you the expertise and that partnership. In terms of integrating with other players, the flexibility is there because it's just literally an SDK that you dump into the client, and if Brightcove supports connected devices, then you could do that as well. I think you guys are primarily just desktop players, right? You guys do live streaming in general. Okay. Yeah. From a desktop perspective, yeah, there is that flexibility. It's just drag and drop.
Okay.
Anybody else? You had a question?
Can you talk to the integration of programmatic and programmatic SSPs with server-side insertion?
Sure. All right. So just to give context to the room here, how many of you are doing programmatic buying and decisioning and inventory management today? I see a couple hands up. All right. So let me just give a little context into what that means. So programmatic essentially means right now your sales team or your marketing team goes out and sells a particular ad slot or a time slot with particular ads. The programmatic piece of it is actually taking that and automating it and saying, you know what, we're going to go ahead and have this much ad inventory, go and sell it for us. Okay, and that means the business decisioning is what goes into selecting the ad versus your marketing team going out selling ad slots. So that is the future for sure, right? The big issue, the one thing that sticks out for me with programmatic, it's not that complex, it's the trust, right? Me as a brand, if I sell an ad to Ford, what guarantees that I'm not going to get a Volkswagen ad after that, right? And that is the trust piece of it. I think that as more people become trusting of that process of just letting go, right? We're very
in our region. It's definite in our region, Australia, Asia. It's very demanded. Yeah.
Okay.
So more and more clients every day, to the point that today we're seeing 40% of our inventory being sold through.
It's the future. It's the future. And I think the one hurdle that programmatic has to overcome is that trust factor, right? I mean, we all know that sales is very controlling and marketing. Brand is very important for us. So when there is enough of that momentum, that is the future. And server-side ad insertion, because it's automated, will have to have that piece of it as well, especially as we talked about when you get into these very low latency, very real-time end-to-end workflows. So programmatic is important and coming. Yeah. Anybody else have a question? Okay. All right, well, that concludes our presentation. We appreciate the time today and enjoy the rest of the conference. conference. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.